Hey guys, it's Emma Vigling with TYT Politics. I hope everyone's having a great Thursday. I have a very interesting story for you guys, and it's really from our very own Ryan Grimm. So you guys should check out that article that he wrote about, and I'll link to it in the description, about Steve Bannon. But, you know, we often heard during the election that Donald Trump was a populist candidate. That, like Bernie Sanders, by the way, the corporatist Democrats like to tie him to Trump, he was a populist. Trump has shown no signs of populism during his tenure as president, but Steve Bannon apparently still has some left in him. Bannon is one of the most racist people I've ever seen in public life. He has a ton of problems. I mean, that's putting it mildly. He said in a quote that the dark side is good. I'm gonna botch that quote, but he is a very bad person, to put it mildly. But he is right about this one issue. Apparently, he is pushing for higher taxes on the rich in the Trump administration. It's a topsy-turvy world that we're living in. Top White House advisor Steve Bannon is pushing for tax reform to include a new 44% top marginal tax rate, hitting people who earn more than $5 million a year, with the revenue paying for tax cuts for the rest, according to 3 people who've spoken to him recently. So this is well corroborated. He is pushing for tax reform and for higher taxes on people earning over $5 million a year. The top rate is now 39.6%, and most Republicans have been planning to lower it significantly as a part of tax reform. As I have mentioned earlier, some of the studies about this Republican and Trump tax plan say that will put us below Greece in income inequality. Greece is experiencing horrific unemployment, horrible economic woes, partly due to their governmental problems, but also due to the fact that income inequality is so rampant in that country. So if the Republicans and Trump had their way, we would be in that same dire situation. The plan Trump put out previously would have only 3 brackets, with the top one brought down to 35%, because even though income inequality has just exploded since Reagan and continues to go up, Trump apparently thinks that the rich just don't have enough. But the rich mean him, and that's really what it's about. I don't think Steve Bannon is going to win this fight, because when it comes to going up against Trump's self-interest, the only person that wins in that situation is Trump. Bannon has described himself as an economic nationalist and has pushed populist agenda both through his previous outlet, Breitbart News, and as an advisor to Trump. That contrasts with what Bannon calls the globalist wing of his party, made up of people like economic advisor Gary Cohn, though both Cohn and Bannon come from Goldman Sachs. But, you know, give Bannon credit. He wants higher taxes on the rich. That's really what it is about. But also, let's keep in mind that Bannon is a strong proponent, as the rest of the Trump administration is, in repealing the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. The Affordable Care Act had the highest increases in taxes on the rich of anything that Obama did during his presidency. He extended much of the Bush tax cuts, much to the chagrin of progressives like myself, although, you know, I was quite young at the time, so more naive. But most of the taxes increases on the rich came in the Affordable Care Act. That's why the Republicans are so hell-bent on repealing it. Replacement be damned. Some Republicans, not all of them, to give them some weird credit. According to IRS data, just over 43,000 people filed tax returns for the year 2014, claiming income of less than, or of at least $5 million, accounting for $600 billion in taxes, or 8.8% of the total taxes paid. That's unbelievable. 43,000 people, excuse me. The new rate would only apply to about a third of that money, as the 44% kicks in at the $5 million level. Still, the hike would pull in around $18 billion per year, or $180 billion over 10 years. So that's a lot of money. What that money would be put to under a Bannon-led White House is not something that any progressive would want. But it's interesting that, yes, there is a populist wing and a populist faction in the Republican Party. And yes, higher taxes on the wealthy is a bipartisan issue amongst constituents. When it comes to each of the corporatist parties, none of them agree on higher taxes in that area, or the higher taxes to the rate of even 44%, or Bernie Sanders' much higher rate to, I believe, in the election, it was over 50% for people earning that much. If you're curious, under Obama, the federal tax rate paid by the top 1% of households went up more than 6 percentage points to an estimated 33.8%. I believe that was at the end of 2016. That was largely due to the tax hikes, again, that were a part of the Affordable Care Act. So that really was why Obama put those in there. I mean, he extended the Bush tax cuts, but then slyly put tax increases on the wealthy in the Affordable Care Act. The ACA also imposed the Medicare tax on investment income at a rate of 3.8%. So yes, most of those tax increases on investment income and as well as just straight income under the Affordable Care Act. However, apparently, according to the Washington Post, there is limited evidence that the rich significantly changed their behavior in response to Obama's tax increase. This is by a University of California at Berkeley professor. As a percentage of all income before taxes, the incomes of the wealthiest 1% of families increased to 22% in 2016, extending a trend toward greater inequality in free market incomes that has continued for decades. The share of income claimed by the extremely rich, the wealthiest 0.1% of families, also increased to 10.9%. So yes, while I believe that Obama tax increase was well-intentioned, it was extremely weak sauce, and there has been nothing done by those tax increases to curb income inequality. That is why the Democratic Party should not be surprised that they bucked an establishment candidate who was more conservative than Obama, even more favorable to corporations, although Obama was certainly extremely favorable to them, for someone who claimed to be populist and whose campaign strategy was run by this populist, a racist nationalist, white nationalist populist, but a populist nonetheless, who now is actually favoring tax increases on the rich. So the idea, again, let's bring it back to Jon Ossoff. He operated in this right-left paradigm where in Washington, the right wants to decrease taxes on the wealthy, and the left kinda wants to keep it as it is. So he was like, I'm in a conservative state, so I am going to act like a Republican in Washington. But the Republican in Washington is not the Republican in Georgia. There is bipartisan support amongst real-life people to increase taxes on the wealthy. It is an extremely popular position, and that's why it's called populism. And that's why both Bernie Sanders and Steve Bannon, I hate putting them in the same vein, but they're two right-left examples of populism, are advocating for it. And it's interesting. So, by the way, this is not going to happen, in my opinion. Again, one, because President Trump is self-interested. By the way, this tax increase would affect Steve Bannon, who has a net worth of around, I believe, well, it wouldn't be income, but Steve Bannon is a very wealthy man. The Democratic and Republican establishments won't agree to this. There's just no way, because they are both bought and sold by corporations. Steve Bannon, despite being, again, racist and terrible, is populist. The rest of each of their parties, though, Bernie's party, the Democrats, Steve Bannon's party, the Republicans, not populist at all. In June, here's a key example. The Blue Dog Democrats, so this is the Democratic Party, but they act like Republicans, met with Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, that criminal who ran One West Bank, White House Chief Economic Advisor Gary Cohn, former president of Goldman Sachs, and Mark Short, the Director of Legislative Affairs, who, by the way, was a Koch brothers fund head. So, really economic populist. To press a simple two-pronged message. This is what the Blue Dog Democrats wanted. First, for tax reform to be sustainable and for it to be a bipartisan effort with the Blue Dog Democrats at the helm. So that just means, so this is a Republican plan with the Blue Dog Democrats tagging along themselves. That's what it is. This good cop, bad cop corporate party thing doesn't work. While Trump may himself not be an economic populist, he ran an economic populist campaign under the tutelage of Steve Bannon, with him whispering in his ear. That's what works. He was lying, and Bannon actually is still trying to implement some of said populism. It's not going to happen. But it was this message that was in Trump's campaign and what worked for Bernie Sanders and what did not work for Hillary Clinton. That's why Trump was able to be perceived as non-economic elite, because he had this message behind him, this Bannon message that Bannon clearly believes in. It's just not working. Where the Republicans are worse with corporations and the Democrats are slightly better with moneyed interests and big corporations that are crushing us and taxes for the wealthy. It's not working. And it shouldn't work for them. That's why the Democrats just have to differentiate themselves, because we cannot let the Republican Party co-opt this and for Bannon's message to be the populist one, for the Republican Party to be the populist party. The perception that the Democratic Party is for the elites is true, but the Republicans are more for the elites. Yet they have the ability, and have successfully done so, looking like they are more populist and more for the farmer, for the local guy. That can't happen. The Democrats need to do a 180 and get back to populism. Real populism. Because this is Bannon's populism, but it's only for white people. He wants everyone else out of here. We need to say we want everyone to prosper. And that's what the Democratic Party's message should be going forward. All right, guys. Have a great day.